Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Puck Watching. As you can see right now, the viewers on YouTube and X can on Apple Podcasts and Spotify right now. Nick is currently wearing a cardboard bag to represent his disappointment in this Blues season. We'll get to him in just a moment, but it's been a while, ladies and gentlemen. It's been since January 22nd that we recorded an episode. And it was kind of hard to really fit in an episode where there was a big stretch of Blues games where we could talk about and break everything down for you guys. There was one stretch, but we were kind of doing something pretty important, which we'll get to in a little bit, little hint with my current hat going on. But Nick, so the bag you surprised me with when we got on in the pre-show. What's with it? What's the emotions right now?
Yeah, it's embarrassment. I don't really know how else to say it. They are the second worst team in the NHL, and they have lost 7 of 8. They haven't won a game. Well, they've won one game, right, in their last 8.
Yeah.
And even before then, it's not like they were winning a lot. They still have yet to win 3 games in a row this year. They have a minus 56 goal differential, and things haven't looked this bleak, honestly. And we were talking about this last night, but the Blues haven't been good for the last few years. Even last year, they had that good run, but they weren't generally like a good team prior to that. And the Blues haven't had this bad of a season. I feel like it has been such a long time.
Yeah.
So it's just so weird to see them in this spot and to be this bad in the NHL. And in any given year, it feels like they would be the worst team in the NHL if it weren't for how bad what are the Canucks are
Canucks
horrible
suck
right now.
Canucks suck.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just an embarrassing time, just given our expectations of what was supposed to be a good season.
I can't take you seriously with these points, dude. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
But I need to get over this. Yeah, it's been a little bit, as we said, and over the course of the week and a half, 2 weeks here since we've been on, but they've gone 1-5-1 over that time. And I remember when we were talking about the schedule ahead, which we always do at the end. You were saying there actually is some potential to win some of these games. We said that Dallas would be, the toughest one among these games, and they lost all 3 of them. All in the same way, by the way, when we'll get to that. And then you lose the games where you could have won against a team like Columbus, but Columbus is hot right now. So we kind of came into the fire there, and a new coach with Rick Bowness, who came into Columbus. He retired from coaching. My God, you're drinking a beer through the bag. Holy cow. Yeah. He retired. He came back, and all of a sudden he's 9-1 as the Columbus Blue Jackets head coach. And then you lose to Nashville as well, with the only exception to the losses being to Florida in what was a crazy game. Basically, all of these games in the last 7 since we've been on together have been actually crazy games, wild games, fun to watch, by the way, until they're not. They haven't been routes. None of that's happened. It's just been the Blues being beat and shown complete lack of mental fortitude in these games. You lose in just probably the worst way possible. I mean, I'd rather in that Nashville game, Nick, lose 6-1 against those guys than see what happened and watch it crumble in front of my eyes,
Yeah, my soul left my body after that game. I don't think I've ever been that disappointed, with the exception maybe of the Winnipeg Game 7. That was one of the, and I know that they've done that before, and I remember the Detroit game as well. Yeah. But that was one of the most devastating second half of the second period and the third, because once they scored that second goal in Nashville, that is, I was like, oh boy. things are deteriorating quickly, and it's just crazy how fast it happened. And that first 10-minute stretch though of that second period, they looked like 2022 team. They were scoring at will, and they were getting some good bounces. They were pressuring like I haven't seen them in a long time. And it was a great sight, but I would easily take that back for what happened after that. I would.
Yeah.
It was horrible. And they lost to the Stars all 3 times. Am I correct? In the third period in the last couple minutes?
Yes. Yeah.
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 So the Stars scored a go-ahead goal with 2 minutes or less, I believe, in all 3 of those games.
Yes.
So, and that happened a couple times as well. And I went to the Columbus game last Saturday and bought some tickets upper row. And it was a really exciting game. And I thought Bennington kind of sucked. And I thought he was kind of the reason they lost that game. And I thought they played a pretty good game and thought they deserved to win. And again, they just don't win the games that maybe they, should win. And Nashville, honestly, I don't even think they deserved to win that game by the end of it.
No.
So yeah, it's not like they blew it. Like they got outplayed.
Here's the fun stat for you. The Blues are 1-2 when leading by 4 goals this season. 1-2. I don't even know what the win was. I can't even really remember that. But the one, so obviously Nashville, and then I can't remember what the other 4-goal lead was off the top of my head, but I guess we kind of just shoved it deep in our brains and kind of forgot about it. But not surprising, but that's the case.
The Detroit one?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that was early. Yeah,
that was early on.
And even in that win amidst the last 8 games where they've lost 7 of them, if you were to tell me before the year started that the Blues are going to beat the Florida Panthers twice and they're going to be the second worst team in the NHL, I think I would have called some BS on that one.
I think I would have too.
But they have looked very good playing the Florida Panthers for some godforsaken reason. Yeah, and I don't understand it. But again, like honestly, it's when you're looking at it right now, it's not the worst thing. It's just very tough to watch, but they are in a really, really good spot to get a very high draft pick, which is great. And you kind of want them to be in that spot at the end of the day. But it's just been grueling.
Yeah. So it's funny that you said that about the Panthers, and the Panthers are kind of struggling as well in their own right when it comes to the Eastern Conference, which is stacked compared to the Western right now. I mean, the separation between the playoff picture there is much lower. I think it's like Panthers are maybe 9 points behind the wild card spot right now. And so that they're kind of still in it. But their Blues became the second Western Conference team to beat the Panthers twice. And it doesn't seem like that's very well deserved, but actually the 2 games that we played against them actually were pretty solid games. Remember the one that we played away in Florida? We watched that game and it was together. It was spectacular.
Yeah.
They played them. And even the one, obviously this one, and same thing happened though, by the way, it almost happened again. You're up 2 on the Panthers in that game. You're, I think, up 4-2.
Yeah.
And they tie it real quick in the second period to make it 4-4. Really tight game in the third. And then Jimmy Snuggerud, man. Jimmy Snuggerud, the last, I think, 9 seconds of the game, scores the game winner there. And they were controlling that last sort of minute. And they finally, they got the goal that they deserved. So they deserve to win that one for sure. It's not like that in that game, a goaltender really bailed you out. In that one, it was, I believe it was Hofer in that one. Yeah, it was Hofer against the Panthers. So Hofer's is responsible for the only win, which is not surprising. He currently leads the Blues in wins with 12. Bennington has 8, despite starting 3 more times than him. So that's a story in itself there, and I know we've talked extensively about that. But before we get into more sort of deep dive here, one of the big sets of Blues news that happened in recent days was obviously the trade of Nick Bjugstad, and that has a lot of, I think, signs of what's going to happen in the future with this team. Bjugstad, not a very impressive career as a St. Louis Blue. 38 games played. He was injured for a while and had 6 goals and an assist for his total, 7 points. He had that stretch first 2 games where he came back where he scored those 2 goals in 2 games. But that was it from him. And I always thought he was fine. I don't think you could ever say that it was any of his fault of what was happening this year, in that bottom 6. Like, you just weren't getting the contributions from the top guys, which was mainly the reason why this season has gone the way it is. So hard to really, I'd say, blame him at all, but at least you get some value out of a guy, actually pretty considerable good value, I'd say, out of a guy like Nick Bukestad, who didn't do much this season, but you get a 4th round pick and a 2nd rounder in 2020 from him. So it'd be interesting to see what that guy does that we acquired. The last name is Martello. I think it's Thomas Bordello, excuse me, in that pick. So, he's been in the AHL for a while, hasn't really broken into the NHL scene much. He's played a few minutes, but what do you think about the trade?
Bukestad's a really easy guy to move.
Yeah.
He's a 3rd or 4th line center. He's a big body. He's someone that, like, other teams, I think, would probably want as they go down the stretch. The Devils are not really in prime spot to make the playoffs, so not exactly sure why they would want someone in Bukestad. But again, it's an easy hockey trade, I think, for Armstrong and Steen at that point. I don't really think it's that challenging to trade someone like that. It's not going to take a huge hit to our lineup. Maybe you can get some value out of them, or the prospects that we got in return. But it's one of those throwaway things. Like, I guess you never know how those guys are going to pan out that we got, sure. But I don't really think it's moving the needle at all. Like, if we're really going to try to trade away some players, we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper, right? So I think it's a fine trade, and you kind of expected him to trade someone like that. But again, it's not going to move any type of needle for what the Blues are in need of right now.
No, absolutely not. But I think, he's probably one of those guys. I can't really think of a guy who, I can think of one maybe. I remember Kyle Clifford.
I do.
That one year. I think he's probably a good example of him. Probably a little bit more skilled than Kyle Clifford, but not by much, and a very unresounding Blues career, I'd say, to say the least. But yeah, I mean, not sad to see him go whatsoever, and we'll see what he can do in New Jersey. I mean, you're right though. Devils are definitely struggling. Oh, you're taking off the bag.
Can't breathe in there.
Yeah. I don't blame you. But yeah, that was kind of the big source of Blues news, Nick. I mean, there's really none really that comes to mind except just performance after performance. Like, it's the same movie, but it's sort of a different ending every single time. Maybe you'll lose 6-5, maybe you'll lose 5-4. But either way, you're pretty much losing by 1 goal or winning by 1 goal in one case. And the Blue Jackets game was an exception with the empty netter. So how do you evaluate that? I mean, it's just kind of weird how all of a sudden, you're on this sort of 7 games here since the pod, and you go from still a pretty struggling team, and you go forward from that, and they kind of put on some fights. You're not going to lie. Like, obviously these games have not been complete games for a while, and we've been talking extensively about that, but there are some signs of this team that it's like it comes together for definitely a strand of minutes, but the sustainability of it is just not there. And that's the glaring thing for me.
No, for sure. They don't know how to win games. They don't. I got into it with a Blues reporter on 101 who was talking about, Randy. He did not get a good reception to that video clip anyway, but I piled on because I have to. But he was saying how that trade for Mayu in exchange for Bolduc is something that's going to haunt Army and one of his worst decisions in the last year. And I'm like, I don't really think that even comes close, obviously, and his whole bag of decisions that Armstrong's made in the last few years. That he's made plenty of questionable ones, but even in the last year, because Randy was talking about the Buchnevich contract, and you're like, I feel like the Buchnevich contract is much worse in totality than simply trading away Bolduc, who, he's scored a few goals, but he's not, an outstanding player for the Canadians right now. And in fact, like a third liner, and he's minus 11, and the Canadians are a good hockey team. So yeah, I time will tell on that one. I still think Mailloux has so much more to go. Like he and Cam Fowler deserves a bunch of blame as well, playing on the same defensive pairing. Cam Fowler looks like a shadow of himself.
Yeah.
And that contract is probably not going to be looking good for the next couple of years if he keeps playing like he is. I understand that Fowler was not playing with Mailloux last year, so I'm sure that can change his dynamic as to how he's able to produce. But man, it's just strange to see everyone play so poorly in general. And the only silver linings for Blues fans right now, I feel like, are just the young guys, right? Like you have Snuggerud, and Jake Neighbors is, I think has played pretty well given the circumstances without Robert Thomas and Dylan Holloway. So you have to be excited about that. Jake Neighbors is still extremely young. I think people forget that. And Snuggerud's been, racking up some goals, has played well. There are still moments for me when Snuggerud is just a little bit too quiet. Like he's just got to, I think he still has a lot of room to grow. But again, he's, 21 years old. He's still got a lot of room and time for that to happen. But I think, when you're without Holloway and Thomas for extended periods of time, I don't understand how you're really supposed to win. I think we got some fool's gold with that Panthers game and the way they've been playing for the last couple of weeks without him, but they've lost almost all of those games since Thomas has been out. So, it's just been a bummer with all the injuries and underperformance. And, it's fun to see them play hard and play together amidst, all of this chaos that's happening within the organization. But there's really no silver lining for me in the current moment, because they've been out of this playoff race for what seems to be months now.
Yeah.
They haven't really been that competitive in terms of points, and everyone, has a blame to go around. So it's disappointing. You hate to have your hockey team not even competing for anything really at the start of February.
A lot to unpack there. First, when it comes to what you just said about the season and how they really have never kind of been in the playoff race since sort of the beginning. And you're right to say that, but at the same time, we've been saying it for we've always had some sort of hope in the midst of all the struggle. That they started out so badly, but they're not really ever a good starting team, as per last year, as per a lot of years past. And this is strikingly different from years past, by the way. This is a team that is 30th or 31st, in goals allowed. This is a team that's 26th or something in goals for. You can go on and on. Those things weren't happening. And the differential, by the way, is, worse by the day. Now you're at minus 56, still trailing the Canucks at minus 61. But it's atrocious. And these things weren't happening in the past. So that's number one. And number two, what you were saying with the silver linings, I agree that the young guys is probably the biggest one. But in the absence of Thomas, we said that when he went down, who's going to be stepping up for this? And it's hard to fill a guy like him in his shoes. There have been two. Buchnevich and Kyrou have been significantly better than what they've were doing, a month ago, I would say, especially when Kyrou got back from that injury. He didn't have points, I think, for the first 11, 12 games when he came back. Now all of a sudden he's starting to get there. He had 4 goals, 9 assists in the last 4 goals, 9 assists in the last 11 games. So 8 points in the last 11. That's pretty good. And that's probably the amount of production that you would expect from him on a given year. This is not any given year, though. This is abnormal, an anomaly, and we've already talked about that a lot. Buchnevich the same way, except he hasn't been consistent all year. Kyrou hasn't been either, but a lot of that to do with injuries. But Buchnevich and Shen and Pareko as well and Falk, those are the only guys that have played every game this year, by the way. So, Buchnevich, he hasn't had any injury problems for what we've known. So can't really excuse that unless he's playing with something that we don't know about, but for certainly I don't think so. But Buchnevich has had a pretty good revival as well. I think he's got, I think, 7. I want to get the stat right. But in the last nine games, he had a goal last night. He had a 3-point night against Nashville, and then he had a 2-assist night in Florida. So just in the last 4, he has 6 points. Then even you go down further than that, he had a point against LA, point against Dallas. So really, hard to really say that Buchnevich has been struggling over the stretch since the last episode either. You're kind of getting the contributions from him, but now I think sort of falls mainly on what's happening on that back end, because all of a sudden this team just breaks down, and the ways it happens are usually one way. It's a stupid penalty that they take, and they go on the penalty kill and they get absolutely blitzkrieged until the other team scores. That the penalty kill is just atrocious. And Dallas, by the way, has one of the best power plays in the league. So, 3 of the last 7 games have been against those guys. So we've gotten a lot of experience in that power play, and we seem to never really figure it out. So that's obviously a big structure issue too.
Yeah, I also think, and this could be wrong because there have obviously had to have been teams that are not great special teams performers, whether it's penalty kill or on the power play, and still could be good teams, 5-on-5, and that's where they get most of their success from. But I do think, especially as it relates to our penalty kill, but even on the power play, I'll start with the power play. There was a moment a couple games ago, I forget which game, I think it was a Dallas game, where they seriously could not get the puck even into their own offensive zone. And that has been a problem for the Blues on the power play for a couple years now, for sure. But that is a marker of a bad team. Like it just is. When you're a man up and you have an opportunity to, create some havoc in your own offensive zone, even if you don't score, not being able to move it into your own zone is such an indicator of just things underneath the surface that are bad. And to me, it happens all too consistently where, immediately the puck goes back to our defensive zone, gets dumped back in, and then we try to do it again. And then all of a sudden they get desperate or are literally just dumping the puck when they get to half ice as if it's 5-on-5.
Yeah.
So that's extremely worrying. And it's been happening the whole season on the power play. And I know they've had a couple goals, but still they have serious issues when it comes to actually entering their own zone, their O-zone on a power play. And the penalty kill, I know that they're not last in the league, but I'm sure for the eyeball test, they are absolutely the worst penalty kill in the NHL. And and there are some really bad teams out there. Vancouver is one of them. There are other ones in the Western Conference as well. But it literally seems like it's a 5-on-3. The way that other teams are able to move the puck. And I know we played Dallas and they're a great team and have a good power play, have great goal scorers in Robertson and Wyatt Johnson, who are not on the USA Olympic team for some godforsaken reason. But they are good, but there's just really no excuse. It literally seems when they move into that bumper position, the opposing team does, and they get it, crease line extended, it seems like it's over. It seems like it's over. It seems like they're going to do a little skip pass across the ice diagonal, or they're just going to find someone in the slot immediately. Yeah. And it just takes a couple different passes for them to completely open up the penalty kill. And I don't understand how that's possible. I don't. It seems like other teams pressure us so much when we're on a power play. and we pretty much apply zero pressure, and our inability to actually retain pucks on a penalty kill and dump it, it's just insane. It's crazy. And that's plagued them the whole year. But there was like a moment where it felt like things were getting a little bit better. But man, I think in the last month and a half, it's been just as bad as it was in the beginning of the year. And the power play, I mean, as well, like they're not able to do things that should be relatively easy when you're a man up, that they just aren't able to do. And I think, again, it's a bad sign, and it's a sign of underlying things that are much bigger issues in terms of talent.
Yeah.
So that's what makes me worried about this team. It's like, yeah, we might get a great draft pick. Sure. And I know Thomas is out, and he's a huge power play contributor. And I know Holloway's out, and again, same way. But even when they are playing, it seems like those problems persist. And I don't think there's really an answer in there. Because last year that really wasn't the case for some weird reason, right? And all of a sudden, it just seems like things completely flipped. And I do think it's vibes for the team, and I think the injuries have obviously plagued them. But man, it's a tough watch when special teams happens, because you're almost like biting your teeth on both sides, right? Like you're like, I don't know how this is going to go. Like they're probably not going to be able to get in the zone, and then on penalty kill, you're like, they're probably going to score, and all the work they just did on 5-5 was for nothing.
Yeah.
So it's just a huge bummer to watch generally.
Yeah. I'll give credit where credit's due, though, for the Blues power play. They had the Dallas game marked the 4th power play goal in the last 4. So there's been some improvement there. And I think just some of it has to do with maybe the departure of Steve Ott. Just maybe. Montgomery took over the power play. I don't know. Just could be a string of luck, maybe. But the fact that they're scoring power play goals without Robert Thomas is actually pretty wild, to say the least.
They're scoring in general without Robert Thomas.
No, they're definitely scoring in general. Yeah. I mean, Buchnevich is really picking up a lot of that slack on the power play, by the way, and as well as Kyrou and a little bit of Neighbors as well. So, but one of the things that we were talking about last time that, we're talking about where's Pius Suter, everything, he comes back and doesn't really make much of an impact for this team. You think, Pius Suter been one of those underlying guys this whole season that kind of goes unnoticed for his playing ability, because I'm really high on Pius Suter. I think he's great. But at the same time, I had not been overly impressed with him, in the last 7 games since we've been on, just frankly because of his really visibility on the ice. I just don't notice a lot of him being there and generating a lot of pressure. Now, he doesn't play with the players that he should be playing with, I think. The line combinations have been really interesting with Montgomery since Thomas is out. Buchnevich goes to center, and he's centering Snuggerud and Snuggerud and Neighbors, I think. And then Shen it kind of goes with Kyrou too. And then Shen is centering. No, you're right. No, I missed that. It's Snuggerud and Kyrou with Buchnevich centering. And then it's Shen, Dvorsky, and Snuggerud. So that's your top 6 right now. And if you thought in the beginning of the season that would be your top 6 in a crucial part of the year, it probably wouldn't be doing very much winning. Right? I mean, I don't think we've got to easily say that, because that means if we're winning with that top 6, that means Snuggerud and Dvorsky are on Calder Trophy territory. And that also means that Kyrou and Buchnevich, especially Buchnevich, are back to their normal selves. And none of that has happened. I don't want to discount Snuggerud and Dvorsky. I think they've played really well, but none of that is clicking for the top 6 currently structured like that could work.
Yeah. And I think Dvorsky's taken a bit of a step back recently. I think the problem with Dvorsky, that when you watch him, he's got some heavy boots, man. He cannot move his skates like a general forward can. He doesn't have a very quick burst, and that's fine as long as you're skilled enough and you have a good enough stick. It's fine, but He's still really young. Like, I'm not hitting the panic button on him, but I certainly think he has not played as well recently as he was prior. But again, a lot of room to grow. But it all kind of goes back, like the top six. It's not good enough to, compete with the rest of the NHL on the first and second lines, even with Rob and Holloway, right? Like, that's kind of what we've been saying the whole year. And, there have been a ton of injuries, right? But the biggest problem that the Blues just haven't been able to figure out is there's no defensive pressure on the offensive zone. Like, there's none. Colton Parayko scored his first goal a few days ago of the season.
Yeah.
So, and Fowler is having an atrocious year, comparatively speaking, to last year. And then you have someone young and Logan Mailloux who's trying to figure out his footing in the NHL. And so far, not so good. Offensively, he's not contributing, and he's supposed to be an offensive defenseman, generally speaking. That's what we were told, at least. So there are a ton of problems, and I think a lot of those problems when it comes to goal scoring and playmaking is that our defensive pairings are not active nearly as much and not effective in the offensive zone as they were last year. I mean, we had a full five coming into the offensive zone last year, especially when they heated up big time and started winning a bunch of games. Parayko, Fowler, and you had Suter in there obviously last year as well, and Tucker. Like, these guys were fully engaged.
Obviously,
and Broberg, sorry. And you just don't really see that right now. And of course, Broberg can make an impact, and Parayko, for his to be fair to him, like, he does try, but there's just been no luck at all. And you thought that Nashville game, you're like, oh, finally, like, you got goals from Broberg, you got a goal from Parayko finally. Yeah. And you're like, hey, this is what happened last year. This is how they became a better team. And you can't just rely on your forwards, especially just given the talent level and who's injured right now, to make an impact. And you need your defensemen to step up. And so far they just haven't. And that's just been a huge, I think, breaking point for the team this year, is that they're just not having success scoring goals from your defensemen and playmaking.
No, that's true. And Parayko, by the way, was -4 last night. He did not have a good game against Dallas.
He is also just really struggling defensively. Defensively, he's just not playing well. I would say the same about Fowler. We all know Mailloux hasn't played very well. You even notice Broberg sometimes just not able to clear pucks, losing the puck. Like, it's just one of those things where it's compiled, and it doesn't even seem like it's the same team that we watched last year, which makes you worried.
And I think for the average person, like, if you're just an NHL fan and you know the roster of the Blues, not like crazy, but at least what these players and who they are identity wise, I think you could make an argument that Parayko and Broberg, it's like, okay, that's a pretty good defensive pairing. But then you go down the list and you say, Tucker and Falk, probably not an effective defensive pair when it compared to the greater realm of the NHL. And we had some hope for Tucker. I just don't think he's ever really going to get there. He's probably at best a third pairing, and one of those guys like Matthew Kessel, where he will be in and out of the lineup on an NHL team, on a good NHL team. Falk purposes, probably a very effective second pairing when paired with the right person. Like, if he was with Ryan Suter this year, like last year with a veteran, maybe he'd be different defensively. And offensively, we've seen a resurgence from him this year, and hopefully that's taken advantage of at the deadline, but that's another story. And then you go down in the third pairing and you say, okay, who's this Logan Mailloux guy? And Cam Fowler, oh yeah, I know him. He's kind of on and off in his past. Had a great year last year. That pairing doesn't really make a lot of sense to me either. But it's how it should be scrambled. Like, that's the right way to go about it. But when you look down that defensive pairing list, Nick, to me, for an average person, it's not good. I think Armstrong really went into this season thinking that they'd be getting a lot more from Parayko and a lot more from Fowler. Probably didn't expect this from Falk, but at least you got that compensated for. But other than that, completely underperforming and not well built to be a playoff contending team, which is exactly what everybody in this fan base said they would be this year, and drastically lower expectations than that now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and it's just, yeah, it goes back to the point, like in order for them to be, a good team like they were last year and be at least a contender. I don't think anyone's expecting them to win, a Stanley Cup. Even last year when they went on that run, there's still great teams out there. They just don't have the performance levels near where they need to be, whether it's defensively or offensively. But I think you ask more questions. Honestly, if I'm being candid, I would ask more questions about the defensive issues than I would offensive. Yeah. Just because you have a lot of young guys in that lineup on the forward front, and it's mixed with veterans. They've had success in the past in scoring goals, but defensively, whether it's actually playing defense or contributing offensively as defensemen, it just really hasn't been there. And Falk is the exception to the offensive rule. But what was that?
Not to the defensive rule, though. I don't think his play has really improved on that end.
No, we just don't really have that right now. And you thought of Parayko last year and Broberg to be very excellent lockdown defenders, and Suter certainly helped in that defensive pairing. I thought he was a very, very good presence for us last year, despite him not playing later in the season. But they have not been able to pick up nearly where they left off last year defensively, and it's killed them. And I think more so on the offensive side than the defensive side. But again, it doesn't mean that they played well defensively as defensemen, especially recently.
I think with how we can really,
I gotta turn this light on. Keep going.
Turn it on. I think one of the comparisons that you can really think about with this defensive group, at least two players that come to mind. Like, I consider Tyler Tucker to be a Robert Bortuzzo, where he's probably going to be somewhat of a liability out there, but he can play defense, but he shouldn't be playing for you in consistency, I'd say. And then at Mayu purpose, it's like, all right, I remember, when Joel Edmondson came to this team, like a lot of hype around him that he had some offensive capability to him, had some size, but never really settled into his role. And right now, Mayhew's a little younger than what I can really compare Edmondson to at the moment, but that's where I see it. That Edmondson and Bortuzzo, right? Like, that was always kind of liability back there. And then they're supporting other veteran guys, which at the time, Pietrangelo, Jay Bouwmeester, right? All these really proven defensive players. And Parayko and then Fowler, like, Fowler's proven, but we saw when in his later times with the Ducks, the Ducks were a bad team, and so were the Blues, but it's not like that he was really picking up any of their slack. And then Parayko, who is called upon to be the number one defenseman on this team, maybe you can make an argument for Broberg now, he is not the number one defenseman on this team, nor has he lived up to those expectations ever since Pietrangelo left. So it's, to me, it just, at the end of the day, you can talk about the expectations, you can talk about the way that they performed, but it came down to a managerial decision from Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen that said, we trust these guys. We thought we saw enough from them last year to where I think that they can bring this defense to victory. And that's not been the case.
No, it hasn't. And I think if you're Armstrong or Steen, you probably want to chalk this one up to, wow, just what a horrible season plagued by injuries, and underperformance. But that's a risky move. You really don't know if this problem will subside next year just because time is going to pass and they'll get a good draft pick, right? I mean, I frankly don't know. I think Broberg's going to continue to get better, which is exciting. I hope the same for Logan Mailloux, because if he does not pan out, the Blues are in a really, really bad position, because now you again lost a right defenseman. And he has, another year with the Blues, and he'll be a restricted free agent, I guess, again. But Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And if you move Falk, you're gonna lose another another right D. So
Yeah.
they're in a world of trouble when it comes to their defensive pairings. And you thought you figured it out last year, but you just don't really know where the chips are gonna fall next year. And you would like to say, hey, this is just an off year, and it's just not theirs to have. And if we're gonna be candid too, like the previous couple years, the Blues also were not a good team, but they overperformed. They just did.
They always did. It's true.
They did not have a good goal differential. They would somehow end up with like high 80s, low 90s in points, miss the playoffs, whatever. And I think it was just kind of fool's gold to mistake that team for being able to put better things together. But then last year, you're like, oh no, we totally can. We're fine. We traded for Fowler. We got our guy, and that was the missing piece to the puzzle. And then you make a risky move and you trade Zach Bolduc, and hopefully Mayu steps in because you no longer have Ryan Suter, and you get Bukestad because Foxa leaves, and you hope you can just rip and replace, and the Blues will perform better than last year and not need this. But the Blues haven't been a consistent full season team in years. It's been years.
22.
And but the years before that, even they struggled. It's not like they were. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. It's just a difficult thing to dissect currently because you still have like 20 something games left.
Yep.
And I'm assuming they'll probably continue their trend, and we'll see where everything goes. But they have some things to figure out, and hopefully, if they end up trading, a guy like Justin Falk, who's kind of a low hanging name that's being thrown out. Hopefully they can get a good return from him and make a hockey trade where we can get a good defenseman or a prospect that can end up stepping into a role next year. But, we'll have to see.
Yeah. I do want to give enough credit though to the injuries. It's been really bad this year, to say the least. I mean, you've missed on Robert Thomas twice this season, and your franchise player. Kairu's out, your second franchise player for a while as well. And then on the defense, though, you're healthy, but you miss on Neighbors for a while. You miss on Suter for a while. He was expected to be a top 6 this year in the center. And then you've had to rely on guys that are not used to this sort of stuff, or at least are not to that capability anymore. I think of a guy like Braden Shen, who has been called upon a lot. And by the way, he's answered the call. I think in some circumstances in the last 10. I'd say he's really stepped up his game, and to I think the Blues' surprise, at least my surprise as well. So I've been happy with his performance. But a guy like him, I hope he's gone, unfortunately, at this trade deadline. But that's beside the point right now. So I think it's Shen. I think, but overall the injuries just they piled up over the year, and I don't really know what that's attributed to. By the way, also the fourth line too has been dealing with a bunch of injuries too. Sundqvist, Walker, Torps, all of Bukestad too, and now he's gone. So, you don't want to ignore the injury bug, but at the same time, you said it earlier on in a couple episodes. You're like, well, it's not like they were playing well even before the injuries, and that's truth. But would you want to see 40 games with a healthy team? Yes, rather than 20 games in where they weren't playing that way.
That was the thing about last year, right? They for the most part were very, very healthy.
Yeah.
You had that injury with Thomas earlier in the year, but he came back and never missed a game after that. And then Holloway didn't get hurt until very late in the season, and Parayko missed a few games, but the Blues were already humming at that point where they didn't really need him to be there at that point, but he contributed a lot last season. So I would hate to disregard that. This year, they have not had that luxury, and everyone's been hurt. There's no consistent lines. And, it's great that young guys are being able to get minutes and get exposure to the NHL. That's, a silver lining there. But at the same time, like, that's why I think I don't know if they're going to do anything crazy in terms of the trade deadline, because they probably think, and honestly, it's not an ill thought of thing, right? It's not a bad theory to think this season sucked. Every single one of our forward lines had an injury at some point in the season, and Holloway has played like 20% of the season so far.
Yeah, I miss on Holloway the injury bug.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Dylan Holloway, like, to be candid, was probably our second best player last year. So when you don't have that type of presence, and of course he could have overachieved, he could have, done more than what people, expected, or what he even expected, or what he could do moving forward. But again, we haven't seen it. We haven't had really an opportunity to even know if Holloway was a little bit of fool's gold last year, and they're going to have to make a decision on his contract soon.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can definitely put a little bit of blame on the injury side, but the problem is nothing has gone well outside of that too. Like, whether it's goaltending, whether it's defensemen, like that's where the problems persist, and you can't run away from it. You just have to figure out what is the issue. If you're going to ride with the team that was here last year, you are going to have to expect some of those things will persist.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. I also wanted kind of relate to this as well. I wanted to highlight it. One of the more sad things that occurred to me when I was going over some stats around the league and the Blues. No Blues player, not one, is in the top 100 in points, goals, or assists. Not one. I'll take one. And by the way, there's a lot of different years where the Blues, even in 23, 24, when they didn't make it, and the year before that, there were times where Robert Thomas was in the big parts of the assists. There were parts when Kyrou had at least 35 goals that put him in the top 50 or something like that. That hasn't happened. So just the underperformance points to obviously the individuals themselves, but it points to the rest of the team too. They can't support each other well enough. The team isn't built to flow together and produce points for one another. So it's one of the saddest stats I think that I've kind of pointed out with this, and even with the defense too. Falk is the only player in the top 50 when it comes to defense points. And we kind of thought that when you look at the defense, Broberg, Falk, Fowler, and Parayko, especially with Parayko last year, 16 goals. He was definitely in the top 20, 30 of goals. Not there this year either. So, again, injuries, you can point to it, not on the defense. So injuries you can point to on the forwards, but not on the defense. And that's just a lot to do with how these people have performed, I think. But very, very troubling, to say the least.
The funny thing is that I know there are a few guys going to the Olympics, Parayko being one of them, Broberg being one of them, Suter, Dvorsky, Bennington, but not as prevalent just being a goalie. They're going to probably be fully healthy, I would imagine, by the end of this break, barring, Broberg. That would suck if he got injured playing in the Olympics. But simultaneously, though, there won't be probably a ton of excuses. Like, once the season restarts in late February, they will have Holloway and Thomas back.
Yeah.
So I just truly wonder how things are going to shape up. Like, given Holloway hasn't been a consistent player for the Blues since, December.
Yeah.
So, and Thomas hasn't played in like weeks now. Yeah. So I'll be curious. It's kind of exciting to see both of them, probably going to be back by that time. But again, like, the injury bug could strike again early, but they will have probably a fully healthy roster, which we haven't seen in a long time. Yeah. And they'll have all their forwards ready to roll. So it'll be interesting to see how it happens, barring, trades as well, and what could happen. But, I've seen a lot of rumors on the NHL circuit of Thomas or Kyrou, and the asking price of trading someone like Robert Thomas. Like, there's just not going to be a team that's going to be willing to do something like that, in my opinion. And I don't even think we should really entertain it, honestly. But at the same time, like, I think all bets are off. You have to consider whatever, people are offering, just given where your team is at. But, the haul we would get for a player like Thomas, or at least what we're asking for, would be substantial. And Kyrou would probably be the same way. But I just don't see it playing out. And the realistic one, like we were talking about before, is Falk. And again, he would have to waive his no trade clauses. And, he's rumored to go to Detroit potentially because they're making a push. You just don't really know how things are going to shape up. And the trade deadline's March 6th, I think. So you'll have like a week back in the NHL, and then the deadline will come and go. So
Yeah.
it'll be a really interesting late February, early March, because it's a dead period, I believe now, or yeah. So they can't do anything until that break is done with. So I'm just going to be very curious to see what they're doing, but I would imagine the asking prices for our big boys is just too much for teams.
Yeah, the Blues still have 4 games until the deadline. They have 4 more games. And I just wonder, like you said it with Thomas and Holloway coming back. Like I wonder, say we lose those first 2 games, you come back and you play Seattle and New Jersey, who are teams that are beatable. And it's like, say if they lose both those games, I wonder if Armstrong has some pre-fired GMs that he's been reaching out to say, all right, think those 2 games are enough. We've seen enough. Let's put some people on the table. And I think the 2 that are the most obvious, and obviously though there is restrictions with the people, as you said, with the no trade clauses, it's definitely Falk and it's definitely Braden Shen. And you throw Binnington in there. Imagine if Binnington all of a sudden plays in these Olympics, which it's unlikely, but with his stats, but he could. If he does, and all of a sudden he wins gold with Canada after playing 4 or 5 games with them, which again, I don't see happening, but say that hypothetical happens, look at that Binnington value all of a sudden go right back up despite an .863 save percentage this year.
I do not see that happening, but it's a great thought.
No, yeah. Well, it's a great thought, but again, why do all these ESPN, all these broadcasters say, well, there's Binnington, he's going to the Olympics this year, whatever, could see this as a matchup in the future.
That's just John Buccigross. That's just John Buccigross saying that. I don't know if anyone else is really saying hey, Bennington's gonna, rob whatever team they play in the Olympics and they're going to snatch gold because of his play. I just don't foresee him playing. I just can't, just given how bad he's been this year. And if he does, then that's kind of an indictment on the coaching staff in Canada if they end up playing him.
But the Olympics are a very different story than what the 4 nations were last year. Obviously, Binnington was better in the regular season, so he proved himself. But the Olympics, you'll get a chance to pretty much play all of your goalies, especially for a team like Canada that doesn't have to rely on goaltending as much until the later medal rounds. But in that group play, when they're playing these stupid teams like Slovakia or I don't know, who else is in there? Italy. Well, I'm saying Latvia's in our group, but the Canada group, like Italy or something like that. Probably good to start somebody else other than, I don't know, who's maybe the starter. Logan Thompson, maybe, who's projected to be the starter for Canada. But that whole point is that there's 3 guys that I think that can be on the table for the Blues, and a lot has to happen. They have to waive trade clauses and all of that, but it's really up to them, Justin Falk and Braden Shen especially. Do they value being a St. Louis Blue that much? Obviously moving from St. Louis in some circumstances and, family, all that. I totally get that. Or do they want to go to a place where they can have a chance to win? And Shen's already won. Justin Falk has not in his career. So does Justin Falk value that opportunity maybe a little bit more than Braden Shen? That's a thought. And certainly something that could definitely happen. And I hope it does. I think that Justin Falk is going to be the top of his value this year, all said and done. Wipe your hands clean. I really do. So let's take advantage of that. I really do. And I'll miss the guy, and he's certainly going to be a void on this team. You're not going to say confidently that this team is going to have any offensive chance when it comes to this defense now without Justin Falk. You got Broberg, you got Parayko and Fowler and Mayu. That hasn't done you any favors this year. And the only one doing you favors has been Justin Falk. And again, given too much crap to Broberg, but it's not like that he's been a great offensive player for us this year. So, but he's getting paid $8 million next year. So
I think Suter is also going to be on the table too, just given his contract as well. He just has 1 more year after this one. And he's a very valuable player for teams to want down the stretch. Cheap. Yeah, and he's not very expensive either. Yeah. I could easily see him being moved. That would make me sad because I think Suter, for what we got him for, I think that's just extremely high value. But at the same time, like I would get why they would want to trade him because of that reason alone. Yeah. So it's him, it's Falk, Bennington. I don't see how it would happen. I'm sure they've already actively shopped him. Like I do. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not sure, but one of those few, I would imagine will certainly get traded. I'd be very surprised to see a top line guy like Kyrou or Thomas to move on. But Schenn, again, he said no last year.
He did.
So I would be surprised if he waived it this year. And I think you're right with the Falk thing. He probably wants to win. And if he can get traded to a contender that is probably going to make the playoffs and maybe make a run at the cup, like if I were him, I'd probably want to do it. I know it would be a lot to move out of St. Louis. You have an established family of a home, but he's still in the time of his career where he has an opportunity to still win and produce. So I would get it.
No, me too. Yeah. I think for Bennington purposes, it would be really tough on the fan base too. Despite the horrificness of his year, I see a scenario where a lot of Blues fans are very up in arms about this and are sad. But again, it just depends on what you can kind of get in return for both him, Schenn, and Falk. I think there is a scenario where, at least for Falk and Schenn, that you get first round picks and more from them. Like, definitely Falk. I think you could get Falk in a first rounder and maybe a second round prospect for a guy like him. And that gives you so much more leverage in the draft. And I remember it was Chris Kerber. We were talking about this last night over text. Kerber was saying that obviously it's been a painful Blues season. I'm glad he's aware of that. He's been broadcasting every game.
He's been tweeting. He is aware.
But he compared the season to like 09-10 when the Blues were very much struggling. I didn't really remember that time. But then the next year, you draft two of your franchise players in Schenn and Tarasenko. Not Schenn, Schwartz and Tarasenko. So, and that turned around the Blues sort of trajectory in a matter of 3 years. And I think that's kind of what we're in for. I'm not saying that we can draft like that. Those two came out to be very good players. But just drafting in the first round, like that, I think Tarasenko was not, don't think he was a top 10 pick. And neither was Schwartz. I think it was 10, 17, something like that. So maybe it was top 10. But either way, like maybe 13, 17. Despite that, like we're going to be drafting a lot higher this year if things turn out the way they do, which it seems like it's going to be. Like if it's pretty much top 5 or bust, I think, right now for the lottery purposes for Blues.
There are a lot of bad teams out there right now, man. You don't really know how it's going to shape up. Like
the second worst.
Yeah, the Blackhawks, the Jets, the Flames, us, and the Canucks are all kind of vying, and the Rangers are all kind of vying for the top pick. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I also think, despite all the issues that we pointed out, like I do think there is a world next year where the Blues would be fine and they could make the playoffs next year, even with a pretty similar team. I do, just given what they did last year. And we've said it before. Every single player on this team has underperformed drastically. They just have. And it makes you wonder if, they'll ever be able to produce like they did before again. But at the same time, I do think they could be better even if they had the same team, but just had a little bit of a different strut to their step next year. So I don't know if it's going to be time to really blow it up. I don't know if they're going to need 3 years, blah, blah, blah. Like it really does depend. But the 09-10 thing, I kind of remember that vaguely, but obviously that is the way it happened. And then things didn't come to fruition and finish like we had hoped until obviously 2019. And that didn't happen with just those players, though. You had to make a fantastic trade to get Ryan O'Reilly. Yeah. And those things, if you're a good team and you have valuable assets, you can make those types of trades. And we traded away one of the best goal scorers in the NHL right now in Tage Thompson to get Ryan O'Reilly. So, you obviously have to pay for some of these things that you do in order to win. But it seems like the Blues have to pay a lot more sometimes for things that they want to do. Rather than like, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, who don't really seem to have to really pay for what they do. They pay, but they just pay a lot of money. It doesn't really seem like things really go against them, generally speaking. But Again, I do see a world next year where they could be much better and they could fight for a playoff spot. Not going to say they're going to win the Central. Not going to say they're going to be third in the Central like we may have predicted this year. But, I could see that world. And it's unfortunate that we're going to have to talk about, trading away good players that could potentially benefit our team incredibly moving forward. But unfortunately, it's just the way it goes when you are the second worst team in the NHL with a minus 56 goal differential.
Correct. I said wild card too, by the way.
I said wild card too, but we're like, oh, maybe three in Central. I think 3 came up a few times because no one knew that the Wild were going to trade for Quinn Hughes.
That was nuts.
And if we knew that moving, forward when we were making that prediction, I would have absolutely said that the Wild are going to be in the number 3 spot. Like, there's no way they wouldn't be.
And nobody would have predicted the Avs season thus far.
Like, I definitely could have said that they're going to be great,
but nobody. But it's a historical season that they're doing. They're 37-9-9 right now. They have 9.
And Quinn Hughes is honestly such a good hockey player. I just don't think people actually understood when he got traded to the Wild. I think he has the most assists in the first 12 games of any defenseman in the entire NHL.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a wild, but that team is stacked now. They can compete for a cup now. Oh, yeah. And we thought last year that us and the Wild are, close, and we are worlds apart now. And it sucks. And even a team like the Blackhawks, where they're not very good either, but we're even trailing them now. And they have a franchise player
and a much better outlook. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it just depends on what happens in the next, month or so. And if the Blues decide, hey, we have our team, we like our guys, and same thing happens next year, then you really, really have to blow it up. But last season, it put a pin in it. It did, where you could circle back and be like, hey, that was a good year. We should have made it past the first round. Great. That's good progress. But now we regressed all the way back to where we were a couple of years ago and worse. Yeah. So you just don't really know where you should go from here. And I have some sympathy for Armstrong and Steiner in this at this juncture. But again, they did dig this. It's not as if they didn't pick these players.
Yeah. And it's a shame that Armstrong is going to have to go out on this note as the GM. I know he's going to still be active in the organization. Definitely not on the day-to-day as much as he is now. But overall, really solid Blues general manager, but a horrific way to finish his tenure as
the last 5 years are going to be tough to look back on in his era.
Yeah, and the ways you look at it is Pietrangelo, and you also look at just this year in general. And I know that you could say the 23-24 years and when they didn't make the playoffs after they did in 22, but it was a little different. I think you saw that coming a little bit, but you didn't see this season as much coming because of the performance last year late. So it's just different. And the way he kind of said all in on this roster when in reality it wasn't up to par. So that's kind of the story with Armstrong. But that kind of wraps it up, I'd say, our Blues conversation for 2 weeks. God, I mean, we needed this. We needed a break. And bad. So we will be giving you a new side of coverage as Nick puts the bag on. But I don't think you need to put the bag on right now, Nick, because we're going to be getting into USA hockey.
That's exciting.
As per the hat right here, USA hockey coverage. It's going to be starting before the games. We have an episode lined up for you guys previewing the USA team and all of our thoughts on what is going to be happening with this U.S. team who's on a very good track. I mean, I watched the 1980 Miracle documentary, not the movie. Very good. Obviously not the movie and all the emotional heartstrings that it sort of played with, but it is spectacular. And please give that a watch if you want to build some hype for the Olympics, because they're looking for their first Olympics since that 1980 Lake Placid gold medal. By the way, kind of forgot that they were down to Finland in that gold medal game and came back to win that. Totally forgot. Obviously, everybody forgets that Finland happened. Everybody thinks that Soviets was just the gold medal game, but far from it. And now you're kind of in a very similar situation where it's going to probably come down at the end of the day to a game with Canada, all things go well. So the Canadians are now your Soviets in this one. It'll be really fun to watch. I know it's kind of weird, but that's the trend of how hockey is, because Russia's out, and really the U.S. has now all of a sudden gained this position where U.S. all this in that 1980 era, Nick, they were like projected like to be maybe a top 10 team, and now they're an easy top 3. And with throwing maybe Finland and Sweden in that third. So who can win it? Who can break through? God, I'm just excited to get out of this coverage for a second. We needed a real big break and start to see what this USA team can do to see if they can get this gold medal.
We get to watch a good team. I heard the ice is pretty small. I don't even know if that'd be the right way to put that, but apparently the vicinity is shrunk. Generally speaking, to what NHL or a classic Olympic
I was talking about that in the episode. Yep.
So I'll be very curious to see. I think that would help us actually against a team like Canada, because they're very fast and very skilled, and we're very physical. So I'll be curious to see. But I'm very relieved to be watching a good hockey team. So that's exciting.
Yeah, USA all the way. God, we hope it happens. But it's gonna be a long road. Got 3 teams in the group to go through. See if we can get it done. Latvia, Germany, Denmark should be okay. And then you're off to the medal rounds, where it's going to be real interesting. So we'll catch
Denmark
you with that coverage.
For Greenland.
That's
for
right.
Greenland. Battling for Greenland.
Playing for Greenland. But you'll listen to that episode in a few days. We'll get that out there on the airwaves. But for now, this wraps up our Blues coverage. Thank God. Because it's going to be a real interesting rest of the season after the Olympic break's over. But we could settle in with this. So exciting. A lot of stuff to come from this. But we will see you on our Olympic episode in a couple days from now. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you then.
See you guys.